Okay, today is step one of the Alien Alphabet project. And we're going to use a couple of guidelines or rules for the Alien Alphabet. Because we're going to be talking about positive and negative space. Positive and negative space is part of our art vocabulary, just like balance and color and line and texture. And you have to concern yourself when you're making a composition that you are balancing your composition, and part of that is looking at the negative space. We're not usually accustomed to looking at the negative space. So this is a creative problem-solving activity that forces you to think about negative space. So we're going to create all the letters in the alphabet by using the negative space and thinking about the negative space. I'm going to take you step by step. I'm going to ask you to use some lined notebook paper to help you out with how to align the letters. You're going to use these lines as your guidelines. You're going to make all the curves in the letters straight. So we're going to start off with stick letters, turn the stick letter into a block letter, and then turn the block letter, we're going to look for those negative spaces inside the block letter, and we're going to make all the curves straight and just focus in on those shapes. We're going to join shapes. 2 are better than 3 sometimes. Some of the shapes you may think you have to do 3 triangles to make a W or an M. Well, we can join some of those triangles together, and now we only have 2 shapes, and it gets less confusing. This is the same reason why we don't use rectangles all the time, because there's lots of letters in this alphabet that are going to be rectangular shape. And we need to use the guidelines because it's going to help us put the rectangular shapes in the correct position, because some of them are going to look like other letters if they're out of alignment. So that'll all make itself clear when we start doing our letters. So the easiest way to start off is by starting off with a stick letter. There's our stick letter for the A. We're going to draw it a little bit bigger to make it a block letter. And if you have to make your block letter by thickening these lines like we did before, then do that. But if you have some experience drawing block letters, you can just draw the block letter. The important part is that these angles kind of line up. This angle for that part of the A should line up with the angle that we're using for the top part of the A. Now, we're not ever going to worry about the outside area of the letter. This is also negative space, but we're going to concern ourselves with the negative spaces that are inside the letter. Here's the letter T, and there's no negative space on the letter T. It's underneath. So this is the negative space. So sometimes it's on the inside of the letter, sometimes it's underneath the letter, but we're really not going to concern ourselves with the outside shapes of the letters. So if you go through and do every letter of the alphabet, I'm going to slide this paper up a little bit, and we'll use these guidelines. I'm going to use 4 lines at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines at a time. This middle line is going to be where the middle part of the A is going to be. So we're going to put a little line right there, a little line like there. We're going to come down here, and we're going to make our shapes. Now, if you were in kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher got up on the board and said, these lines right here represent A. What if she'd have drawn these 2 shapes and said, this is A? Same thing with the letter B. If you draw a letter B and make these 2 pentagon shapes, like home base, and put in this little triangle over here, then that's going to, and when we put in a dotted line, there's our letter B, but we're focusing in on the negative aspects of the letter. If we were to draw the letter C and then turn the round parts of the letter C into angled parts, we'd end up with something like this. And now when we cut in and put in the dotted lines, there's our letter C. So start off with the stick letter. Look about, or turn it into a block letter. Think about what this shape is, and then draw this shape, but straighten out the curves. Now it's here, it says to join the shapes. Sometimes 2 are better than 3 shapes. For example, I saw some people today drawing the M or the W with these three triangles like this. So here is the W shape. If we were to draw, a W inside here, this is what the W would look like. But if you join these two shapes together, when you join these two shapes together, you draw this shape. It's like one of these triangles, and then you overlap the triangle like this, and then underneath here you place the other triangle, and you have to be concerned that these lines, these angles for these lines line up. So now you have one shape that you're drawing here and one corresponding shape down here that you're drawing, and there's your W if you fill in the rest of the lines. There's your W. Well, the W and the M are the same letter except one's upside down and one's right side up. So if you line these curves up, or these angles, then it's really easy to make the letter M. So there's people that came up and they had a hard time drawing the letter C or drawing the letter G. So if you can draw C, all you have to do is bring this part in, and now the C would be a G. We'd make this a little bit bigger. But this is something you got to figure out. You follow these rules, that two shapes, and this is probably the weirdest shape. That's the only one that kind of looks like an animal. Looks like the dog's head, if you wanted to get abstract with that. So a lot of these letters, people had a problem with the O and the Q. Well, here's an O and here's a Q. So if you straighten out the letters, this crystal shape will become the O, and the same crystal shape with the addition of this becomes the Q. So that shape is Q, that shape is O. People were doing the S with some rectangles, and if you draw a square, a rectangular shape, and put the S in as these diagonal rectangles, then you have this part here that comes down and it really looks more like an S. But the S could be this shape here like this, and this rectangle here like this. It's the same shape. You could even bring this down, you could bring that up to modify those shapes to make them even more S-like, to give the tail of the S on there. So all sorts of stuff is possible. The last letter people were having a hard time with was the letter J. And here, if you draw out what you think a J looks like, and then this would be this shape right here, because I'm straightening out that curve and making an angle. And right here, I'm going to make the same angle again, go straight up, go straight over, and the J ends up being these two shapes like this. Once this is all erased, there are your two shapes that represent the letter J. And you could put other shapes. You could put another triangle over here to make it more round. But again, 2 triangles is better than 3 triangles. So to remind you of our directions again for the alien alphabet is, number 1, use your guidelines on the notebook paper. Make all your curves straight. Join shapes together. 2 shapes are better than 3 sometimes. Sometimes, not always. And the last part of this is, I would like to show you this. There's our secret coded message.